Just recording.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Got it.
Okay. Hello from the tech challenged world.
Everybody, please mute.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you. Yes, today I've been to Canada. I've been around the corner, and now I'm down with you. So this evening's film is a Royal Affair. Royal Affair is from 2012. Director's name is Nikolai Arcel, and he was also the screenwriter, and he is known for, he's directed a bunch of award-winning films. Probably the most famous was The Original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This particular film was based on the novel The Princess Afblodette from 2000 by a Danish author, and somewhat inspired by the novel The Visit of the Royal Physician from 1999, also a Swedish novel. Somebody's echoing, or is that me? Okay.
I might have two computers at the same time.
Okay. Okay. You still getting that, Dora?
No.
I don't know why.
A little bit, yes. I think you have to mute everybody. Yeah, I get it. Yes.
Fern, can you
Yes.
mute people?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, it's a story of social conflict and royal intrigue that is political, romantic, at times humorous, based on actual events about the experiences of young Queen Caroline Mathilde of Denmark and Norway, who also was a member of the royal British family. The gripping tale of brave idealists who risk everything in their pursuit of freedom for their people. Above all, it's a story of a passionate and forbidden romance that actually changed an entire nation. It's a true story. It's a story during the Age of Enlightenment, one couple's zeal for freedom and political reform to create a progressive force against the state council that would keep Denmark poor and ignorant in the name of tradition and faith. For those of you who didn't study it, the Age of Enlightenment, or simply the Enlightenment or Age of Reason, was a cultural movement of intellectuals in the 18th century, first in Europe, later in American colonies. Its purpose was to reform society using reason rather than tradition, faith, and revelation, and advance knowledge through science. It promoted science and intellectual interchange and opposed superstition, intolerance, and some abuses by church and state. Spinoza, Locke, Newton, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Immanuel Kant are some of the names that come out of the Enlightenment. The film has sumptuous settings, urgent romance, and intellectual substance that make Royal Affair what I call a mind opener crossed with a bodice ripper. Frederick VI, he ruled from 1768 to 1839, was the son and eventual king, uh, and Louis Auguste, 1771 to 1843, believed to be Struensee's daughter. This is the daughter that she bears during the film, became mother to Queen Caroline later on. This covers the years 1766 to 1775, just prior to our own revolution. Princess Caroline Mathilde of Great Britain is shown writing a letter at the beginning to her children in which she professes to tell the truth. In flashback, Caroline talks of England as she was about to leave to marry Christian VII, the King of Denmark. She is passionate about the arts and education, but when she arrives in Denmark, she meets Christian hiding behind the tree. Right away, we see he's a strange character and becomes stranger and stranger as we go on. On her ride to the castle, we see her looking out on the streets of the city. She sees poverty. She sees rats in the street, as we do. She learns that many of her books are banned by the state. And she learns that the Queen Dowager, Julianne Marie, and his half-brother, the heir presumptive, are not well regarded by the people, and later will result in her eventual downfall in the kingdom. Not only is she well read, she's also talented, so much so that Christian becomes jealous of her talent, a notion planted by the Queen Dowager herself, that she is just what the kingdom needs, an artful soul, and he forbids her to display her talents, telling her not to steal his light. If you remember during the concert, he stops her. Christian is apparently, should I say, mentally ill, and also rather debauched. Caroline becomes unhappy in the marriage. She is soon pregnant with a son who would become Frederick VI. But the couple grows far apart, and the king stops visiting her bedroom. Meanwhile, simultaneously, we meet the German doctor Johann Friedrich Struensee, and he's recruited to work as the king's personal physician. Struensee is an enlightened man, greatly influenced by the writings of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He keeps the secret from the state, who welcome him because his father is a well-known priest. But there are two people that influence him to come to the court. Counts Rantzau and Brandt want to get him close to the king in an attempt to reestablish themselves in the court. So in reality, it's almost Shakespearean what's going on here. King Christian takes a strong liking to Struensee, and he becomes a close friend and confidant. When Struensee manages to inoculate Prince Frederick, the small baby, against the smallpox epidemic, he becomes greatly respected in the court. But we see that Christian has very little influence in the ruling privy council, what they call the ruling privy council, and the laws of the country are mostly decided by statesmen. But Struensee convinces the king that he can have more power by acting. The doctor begins, we see that the king has an affinity for theater, and Struensee, knowing this, convinces him, act the part of the king, and he loves that, and he immediately takes to it. But the doctor begins writing speeches for the king, which advocate Struensee's own progressive views and several reforms. When Struensee is appointed royal advisor, he enacts reforms that could change the destiny of Denmark as one of Europe's most progressive countries. Among the over 1,000 reforms he issued, which I'll get into, Caroline and Struensee learn of their mutual interests and liberal views. They fall in love and begin an affair. When Caroline becomes pregnant, they protect themselves by convincing Christian to resume sleeping with her. As a result, Princess Louise Auguste is believed to be the king's daughter at first. Meanwhile, Struensee, as I said, was appointed the royal advisor, and in truth, it's a laundry list, but worth repeating. He abolished torture in the kingdom. He abolished unfree labor. He abolished the censorship of the press. He established the free press. He abolished noble privileges and undeserved revenues for nobles. He abolished the royal court's aristocracy. He abolished state funding of unproductive manufacturers and of several holidays as well. He introduced a tax on gambling and luxury. He had horses. He established a means of horses to fund the nursing of foundlings. He put a ban on the slave trade in the Danish colonies, criminalization and punishment of bribery, reorganization of the judicial institutions to minimize corruption, and as well, university reforms, allowing poorer people to attend university. And to this day, by the way, the University of Denmark is free to anyone in the world. It still exists as a free university to the world because of him. and he reformed the state-owned medical institutions and reduced the power of the aristocracy. He was one of the first to establish countrywide medical care where it could be available. The Queen Dowager, Juliana Maria, notices the romance between Caroline and Struensee, and their affair is revealed. I love that scene when that chambermaid discovers what's going on and brings it to them. And their affair is revealed. Christian is initially angry, but he forgives his friend and states that they must carry on as if nothing had changed. Juliana and the prominent statesman Guldberg, the evil Guldberg, are strongly against Struensee's reforms, while the Danish people also grow unhappy when it becomes clear an immoral foreigner has power over the country. Here we see the power of propaganda, the power of Guldberg and the rest of the council. Guldberg incites a coup against him. Christian refuses to hand Struensee over to the people, but Guldberg lies that the doctor and Caroline are planning to murder him and take control of Denmark. Christian thus allows Caroline to be arrested and taken to live in exile. The marriage of Caroline, Mathilde, and Christian was dissolved by divorce in April 1772. Christian issued a pardon, in fact, not wanting his friend to die, not wanting Struensee to be executed. But Guldberg kept this from becoming known in time, and Struensee was beheaded. Guldberg becomes Denmark's new de facto leader, and many of Struensee's reforms are overturned. Denmark, in effect, entered a dark age. After the execution, the film returns to Caroline writing that letter, where she reveals that she's dying of scarlet fever. And she did die at Celle on the 10th of May in 1775. She had a short life. 10 years later, Prince Frederick, her son, and Princess Louise Auguste read the letter. On screen, the text reveals that Frederick soon became king via coup d'etat and returned to try and reform the ways of Struensee. From 1784, Frederick VI acted as regent and restored much of Struensee's reforms. He did after this dark time. The king himself considered Struensee a great man, even after his death. Written in German on a drawing that the king made in 1775, 3 years after Struensee's execution, was the following: Ich hatte gern beide gerettet. I would have liked to have saved them both. I would have liked to have saved them both, referring to Struensee, not Struensee and his wife, but Struensee and Brandt, because Brandt was executed along with him. The director, Nikolai Arcel, noted that tonally he was inspired by the great epics from the 40s and 50s for this film, where films would often feel like literary works, structured around characters and the passage of time, and not clearly following the obvious screenplay roadmaps. He and his team wanted people to simply experience the story through the eyes of the characters, taking the 1760s for granted, even though the period is obviously there in the set designs, the costumes. It was filmed and edited as you would have filmed and edited a film taking place in modern Copenhagen. The filmmaking is very modern, yet, because of the way we see the streets, we see the mud, we see the rats. We're always used to seeing clean streets and clean clothes in a lot of these films. Here, he shows the dirt. Mads Mikkelsen, who has become internationally prominent since his breakthrough role as the bad Le Chef in the Daniel Craig James Bond film Casino Royale. If you've seen that, you may remember him. He adds his role as Struensee into another bravura performance. He was also in The Hunt. He was in Another Round. He's been nominated for Academy Awards. He's been in films that have won Academy Awards. This film was nominated for an Academy Award. And on American TV, some of you might remember him as Hannibal Lecter in the series Hannibal. Alicia Vikander as Queen Caroline Mathilde, this was one of her first appearances in film since she's become a popular actress worldwide in both American and international film. She's a classically trained dancer, trained at the Royal Swedish Ballet. And for 9 years, she did her practical training at the Stockholm Opera and has starred and won accolades in many prominent films, including she starred in the film Ex Machina, a popular film from several years ago. She starred in Anna Karenina, and she also starred in the Academy Award-winning film The Danish Girl, for which she won she did win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Mikhail Bo Folsgaard, who plays Christian VII, had just graduated. And this is interesting. He just graduated from the Danish National School of Theater when he was chosen for this role. He had never appeared in a film before. This is his first screen appearance, and it earned him an award for Best Actor at the Berlin Film Festival. Trini Drinholm, who plays Julian Marie, the mother, the dowager, has also become one of Denmark's and international cinema's most prominent actresses, with roles in many, many award-winning films. The cinematography, the set design, the costuming, the music, all added to the sumptuousness of the production. And I thought it was it was a beautiful film, well structured, intellectual in many points, and yet could be considered a mass entertainment. But it teaches us a lot because it does hone close to the history of the time. So, and it also is at the beginning of the revolutionary period in the world. And we saw how the spark of what was happening in France, what was happening in England, and what was happening in the colonies was spreading even to Denmark at the time. So I hope you enjoyed it. And now I'd love to hear from you and hear what you thought about it. So who's going to jump in first? Or am I going to play the fickle finger of fate? Karen.
Please unmute.
Yes, she's trying.
There it is.
There you go.
I really liked it because I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about this period in Denmark, and he was also the king of Norway. But it was just such an interesting story. It was a bit long, but you know, I hardly felt the time at all because it was just so interesting. And I felt sad for him because I felt that he had lost his mother, and then his father had no interest in him. So he, maybe with a little bit of parental guidance, he might not have been quite as crazy as he was. And his, the person who was, I guess, supposed to look after him, his tutor, was actually mean to him. He was beating him, and you know, so he was in a very bad situation, and it made worse by his mental illness. Let's see, and well, I liked the prince, and I liked the queen also. She was beautiful, and I was sad for her also because of being married to someone like that, and then really not able to do anything, you know, to help until she coordinated with the doctor to try to get some reforms done. And let's see, the other thing was I was really liked the scenery. I know you call it cinematography, but it was so beautiful when they went on the horse ride, and you know, when they were out, just out in the country looking at the nature. I thought that it was very beautiful. Anyway,
Terrific.
that's my impression.
Well, thank you, Karen. That's great. Yeah, it's the film, you know, it introduces intrigue. It hits all the right notes, but I think one of the takeaways should also be how powerful with the right person, with the right partner, a woman can be in that period. You know, because of Struensee, between the two of them, they were able to get things done. And, you know, so it was, whereas the king didn't want her to do anything. He just wanted her out of the way. And Stroincy saw how bright she was, and he educated her as well, along the way. But we saw how surprised she was, because when she was in England at the beginning and she's telling her mother, and her mother is telling her, you'll go, because she was a cousin, I believe she was a cousin of King George. When she was sent to Denmark. So it showed you how an intelligent woman, can have an effect with the right man. But thank you. Rachel.
I loved the movie. I loved it. And the word I could just say is lush. Everything about it. Like you said, it hit all the elements. I also liked the nonverbal conversation that was happening when they look across the room without trying to make it obvious. And, they also did not like when the chambermaid smelled it. She didn't right away say anything, but you knew exactly what she was thinking.
Yes.
And I love, like I've said before, I love foreign movies for that they don't have to hit you over the head. They do it with nonverbal. They do it with movement and showing what a person feels without having to hit you over the head with it. And I just found the whole movie lush. It's a genre I love. I've always liked these kind of movies, and I never knew about this in Denmark. And I actually did feel sorry for the king because he did have a mental illness, and everybody around him was manipulating me. The only thing that I had a problem with was I was very surprised when there were proclamations made that were reform for the average person, that they turned against the doctor. And I understand about propaganda, but when their proclamation was made, they posted it onto the wall. So you would think that they would say, hey, even this guy that's a foreigner, if he's helping us, why not keep my mouth shut?
That's a good point. But that's the whole raison d'etre for the court, was that he was a foreigner and he was upsetting their power. It was a power struggle, and they wanted to keep the power. And especially because of his mental illness, they were taking money, they were exercising power at the expense of the people. And here comes an outsider who's educated and helping the public, and they worked against him. He became the infection when he was trying to clear up the true infection within society. So thank you, Rachel. Marilyn?
I really loved it. Being a monarchist at heart, I love this kind of stuff. And I believe, Shelley, that Caroline was the youngest sister of George III. He had like a gazillion siblings. My understanding is she was the youngest sister, which is interesting because he was as mad as a hatter also.
Yes, well, presumed. They didn't think he was as crazy as Christian, but he was presumed to be
Anyway,
a bit.
I loved it. I love the costumes. I guess her name is Alicia Vikander. I remembered her from the Danish Girl. She also was in, I believe, The Light Between Oceans, which is a great book.
Yes.
She was in there. All in all, I love the banter about Hamlet at the beginning.
Yes.
And I thought that was really, that they brought that in, and I don't know, I also love the line, which I made a note of, and you already said, "Don't steal my light," which really is very current, because how many times, like, even whether it's, anybody in politics, when the wife, when I guess it's the wife who gets more attention.
Please mute it, mute.
When the
Go
wife
ahead,
gets
Marilyn.
more attention than the husband, it's very, everybody, like, it's then and it's still now also. There was a lot in there. that was then and still now. There's still the power and the control that was then and there. There's just, when you have these monarchs then and power struggles now, it is and will always be, I suppose. But all in all, I just really loved it. So thank you for choosing it.
My pleasure. And you hit the 3 R's. I mean, the film was resonant, it was relevant, and it was revelatory. I think it really revealed things to us as an audience, and I think a lot of the way, and that's where the contemporary attitude comes in. For him to have him say, "You're stealing my light," is such almost a modern phrase introduced into the film. So it really works for us as an audience to get involved, to be be engaged in the film. Who else? Bobby, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just had a question because I agree with everything everybody's been saying about the movie. I thoroughly more than enjoyed it. Was it that early that they had that he was able to do that with the smallpox?
Yeah, I mean,
it was that date. I thought it was later than that they came up with that.
Yeah, it was about that time, but it was also the fact that he was a good doctor. I mean, he obviously was a good doctor. And as I said, this was a time of science coming into its own. There were a lot of philosophers and a lot of scientists having an effect on society at that period of time. And he also, he cleaned up the streets. He, in effect, he saw that the way the streets were, the way the people were living, he cleaned it all up. He made it a cleaner city, Copenhagen, and he also managed to spread it out beyond there to the farms and everything else, much to the consternation, as I said, to the royalty. If you remember, Brandt comes to him and said, I owe money because of you. And it's as if, well, you created me, and you believed the king was crazy, and you believed the council was taking over, and now you want it 2 ways. This is what essentially, led to his downfall, was this kind of behavior. People didn't want to give up what they had. But yes, scientifically, these things were coming about at that period in time. Who else? Anybody else out there? Yeah, Barbara.
I was entranced by the dancing scene, which I thought was very sensual and romantic, and it immediately made me think of the dance in The King and I, and the dance in Picnic, and also the dancing in Dirty Dancing. That there's just a visual thing, a thing.
Yeah, it's a and both of them, Mads Mikkelsen was also, before he became an actor, was a ballet dancer.
Really?
Yeah, but so both of them are ballet dancers. Yes, he has a great command of his body. Those scenes, they are sensual in the film. And I think romantic, sensual. I mean, it's just the 2 of them,
looking
together.
at each other.
Yeah, it was terrific. It's great that you reference these films that also have these great dance scenes. I remember, as soon as you said Picnic, I remember
the dance.
With the clapping of her hands and the dancing, Kim Novak. Yes. Who else? Anybody else out there? Come on, there's got to be somebody that's. Yes, Harriet. Harriet, you have to unmute yourself. You press the space bar. Try that.
I've asked her to unmute.
She's having trouble unmuting.
No.
I can't unmute her.
Harriet, look for either on the bottom, there's a mute button, or where your picture are, there are 3 dots. And if you see the 3 dots, that's where you can go.
Really?
Yeah, she,
We can hear you.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell everyone here that we started with Shelly many years ago when he was
Yes.
closer to where we live. And what a thrill it is to be back listening to him and seeing all the fine films that he's still working with. And we're just sorry that we just live too far up north to keep coming down there. So this was a wonderful opportunity to hear you giving us all this wonderful information and background.
He's still wearing black.
Yeah. That doesn't change. It's nice to see you, by the way. I did see you when you came into the Zoom. Thank you. It's great. Great. Okay. Anybody else? Any takers? Come on. You thought nothing? You felt nothing? You saw nothing?
Well, I love the idea that it was a period film. It made me think a lot of like Downton Abbey, which was later, but the idea of the scenery, the mansions, the homes, and the riding in the land, riding in the carriages. It had some of that feeling again.
Yeah, it
But
did.
so so are you saying there was a real Dr. Strunzi there?
Yes. Oh, yes. Very much so. He
It
really
also makes me
existed.
want to go and now look up. I want to Google all these kings and all these people and find out more information about them.
Yeah, there is a great deal of information, and it's interesting because it's out there, and most people just don't know about it. But it is it's foundational history. If you when you read about it, even though you see the film, you read about it, you can see that the things that are still happening today. I'm talking about advances and things like that. When somebody comes along who can advance a society the way he did, and how he was stifled, how he was put down and eventually beheaded by an uneducated public, by a misinformed public. That
Sounds
they were
very
always,
familiar to what's going on now, doesn't it?
doesn't it? Yeah, misinformed.
That we're all getting now.
Yeah, yeah.
How the corruption in government and the bribery, all of that, all those things are going on always.
Well, and despite the fact of all the technical advances in our society, that information can still go the wrong way. People could be misinformed. So terrific. Thank you. Karen, did you have something else?
Yes, when we were talking about them having the messages posted on the wall,
Yes.
but we also saw that they had that puppet show. I believe that
Yeah.
probably a lot of people could not read, and so the puppet show was actually their message, and they probably didn't know who was giving them the reforms.
Yeah, you're right. It's true. They weren't. The majority of Europe was uneducated. Education belonged to the wealthy, not to the masses. Eventually, they were taught to read rudimentary wise, and but not to that extent. So you're probably right. The information they would get would be told to them, would be proclaimed to them. Yes, yes.
Right. And the other thing is, let's see, what was it now? I forgot. Oh, well, it'll come back to me.
Okay. Marilyn?
Well, I just wanted to point out to the ladies in the group the difference between men and women at the time. The men could fool around, but not the women.
Right.
Especially the queen.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can understand why she did. And he was totally debauched. I mean, he even tried to drag Struensee into it. if you remember at one point, he just, he couldn't control himself. Which led to the theories that part of his madness also came from syphilis. That he might have gotten syphilis at the time, which would have contributed to his madness.
Mel had his hand up.
Who?
Melvin? Melvin.
Yeah, that's Bobby, you had something else?
No, the other thing is too, that the people were very religious in those days. And, I guess the well-to-do could be sinful, but, I think that had a lot to do with it too. And I mean, this theory with the women, I mean, we just saw another movie about that, didn't we? And that was up to today, I mean, women's role in society.
Yes, of course. It's also the fact that these were not democratic societies. And what's interesting is the bloodlust that the people had, when he was turned, when they decided to execute him, this is a spectacle. This was the people's entertainment to see somebody get beheaded. It didn't matter to them. If they said behead him, that's what they wanted. They created the stage and they did it.
It was like the guillotine period during the French Revolution was.
Absolutely. It's it's a kind of bloodlust that the people get. And we see it. We see it. So we've seen it here. We've seen it here in this
with
country.
the lynchings.
Yeah, with the lynchings, but even in these modern times, the attack on the Capitol is in a sense that kind of thing. People can be led.
Misled, yes.
Misled, thank you. That's the right correction. Anybody else? Sandra Fuss?
Next show.
When are you going to do another Zoom?
2 weeks.
Oh, okay. I just found it interesting to see the early forms of inoculation where they had to make a cut and put the serum into it. I found that interesting. The film was beautiful. The costuming was gorgeous. Anyways, historical dramas are really good. You learn a lot. So
Yeah, if they're done well, yes. And this was done well. I mean, it was done well enough.
It was done well.
Yeah, it received a number of nominations technically and for best foreign language film. Yeah. Marilyn.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much because I learned so much. Historically, I did not know any of this. And I love the developing characters. Each character had such dimension. Of course, visually, it was exquisite. So I appreciate all the information and thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I love bringing these films to you and having these discussions with you. They're fun. So somebody joined the fun. Yeah, Mel, you had something else?
Yeah, I just want to point out about this when he inoculated against smallpox. That first came out, it was really cowpox that they were inoculating people.
Right.
And some people actually died from the cowpox because they didn't control the dosage that they gave the individual. And of course, some are more susceptible. But from that immunization came the immunizations that we have today, which most people agree does very well. Unfortunately, we have some that don't think so.
Yeah, I know. Don't get me started. Karen?
Yeah, I remember what it was I was going to say. I looked up some information on the king, and they had some portraits that had been painted, of the family, the way they did back in those days. And there's one where, they're all very serious except for the king, and he's got this parrot on a stick. And they have him and he's like leaning back, laying back and looking at the parrot, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was to them he was comical. I mean, he was, he wasn't taken seriously, and just could be manipulated. I mean, when they they give him the young black boy to play with. I mean, it showed you how badly the kingdom, how badly these advisors behaved. It's to get him out of the way. It's just, it was primitive. It was primitive. So, Marilyn.
That listening to this reminded me, or the fact that when Caroline was going to Denmark, this was probably very common when these kings and queen had to marry these people that they've never seen before. They see them on their wedding day. There's no due diligence. There's no checking. I mean, she had no clue what she was, who and what. And I just assumed she obviously came from a very respected, sophisticated, educated family.
Yes.
And yet she thought she was going to the same thing in a different country. And it was like, wow. And this is what happens.
And what's interesting is she spoke these languages. That showed you how sophisticated and educated she was. She adapted to the languages very quickly. It really, yes, they did, because this was the way to keep these monarchies, keep them royal, intermarried, also created alliances.
Victoria's children were married to monarchs.
I was getting there. Yeah, Queen Victoria purposely.
The opening of World War I, the King of England, the Kaiser, and the Tsar are all first cousins.
That's right. And they look alike. They look alike too.
Yes, they did.
I mean, they look like they could have been brothers.
She purposely did that. She had them marry monarchs in other countries to effectively create the alliance with these countries.
Yeah, which would work.
Right.
But she was also given the information at the beginning. She was told he was educated and that he liked to act. And I think that she sort of fell for that idea. She really believed that he was
wouldn't have had a choice anyway.
Sophisticated person.
Yeah.
These marriages were all arranged.
Yeah, they were, but yet they had it, they wanted it to feel like, her mother apparently, well, the way it's structured at the beginning of the film, the mother was very supportive of her, but also supportive of her it'll be fine. And unfortunately it wasn't. I'm sure, if we look at a lot of these monarchies, you could see it. I know there was a film out about 2 years ago about Austria, about the Princess of Austria being Queen of Austria back in the turn of the century, and she was a very, very modern woman, and she was kept down because of it, to the fact that they said she was probably crazy, and she wasn't. She certainly wasn't, but she was forced into affairs and beaten down by the monarch's mother. So very interesting.
Again, there's that same double standard that Mel was talking about. I mean, it was known that all of the kings and the Prince of Wales in England and the equivalent all over had mistresses. Here at France was like notorious for that. You don't hear about the Queen. It's just a double standard.
Yeah, and you could be sure that there probably was among the women, there probably was, but it was kept quiet. It was kept quiet for fear. Who else?
Bobby had her hand up.
It's Sandra and then Bobby.
At the beginning, was it her mother or her lady in waiting that told her the key is to get him into your chamber the first night? Like, what did that mean?
Well,
Right.
it would endear him to her, and also hopefully they'll have a child right away. But it was to get him paired up with her immediately.
Okay.
He had no idea. He had no idea, if you remember.
No. So was it the lady in waiting or her mother? I can't remember.
Was her mother. It was her mother.
Yeah, originally it was her mother.
So anyways, okay.
Yeah, okay. Bobby?
No, just a little bit of history about the queen of, that you're talking about. She had her own castle in Hungary. She had her boyfriend in the castle, but I think she was also the one that started compulsory education for everybody in both countries. And even though the Jews in the countries were, they still did not like them and they had all kinds of whatever, they learned to read and write. And it was very interesting. We just did a family history, and I discovered that a great uncle was her husband, the emperor's doctor, and lived in the palace. And they made the count, but they changed his name so the people wouldn't realize he was Jewish. It was a little, so very little bit of history. But all through history, they all wanted to get the gals married. You know, that was the mother's, make them queens. You know, they take the kids and they use them as pawns for diplomacy, to make them, you know, to get them married to kings of different countries or nobility.
Well, it created, as I said, it created alliances for these countries. Yes. Fern?
In the States too, it wasn't just in Europe. How many of the very wealthy American women married gentry so that the gentry got the American money, and the American, like Vanderbilt, or I forget which one, Consuelo Vanderbilt, I think was a pawn, and she had to marry somebody she absolutely did not want to marry, but they needed her money for, you know, and they wanted her to have a title. So
yes,
it you know, it's came down to America as well. Even in Downton Abbey, they did that. Shirley MacLaine played somebody who's daughter.
Right. Well, it's corporate alliance. It's corporate alliance.
Yeah. It's always about the money.
Oh.
When they tell you it's not, it's still about the money.
It's always about the money. Fern?
Yes, I was just looking, I decided while sitting here listening, that I would just look and see what they said about Prince Christian, King Christian. And what came up is the current Crown Prince of Denmark, Christian, and his lineage and his cousins. And if you want to read something interesting, so to see the line, how the line doesn't end at the end of the movie, how it continues today. And this absolutely adorable 18-year-old is the heir, you know, is the his Crown Prince Christian, and it shows his cousins and his lineage. So you know, we all come from someplace, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How this 18-year-old today, where he comes from, and what I wonder what he would think of seeing his forefathers in this film.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's, you know, his daughter, Struensee's daughter, actually, went on to become queen, and she was quite influential in the 19th century. She also had a long reign, and she was quite influential. So it is interesting. These stories are interesting.
Yes.
They're compelling. History is wonderful. History gives us a look at the present.
If you want to look at it, you have to want to learn it first.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, anybody else before I move on to what we'll be seeing in 2 weeks? Okay, in 2 weeks we have I'm Your Man. I'm Your Man, a German film, also nominated for the Academy Award. And it's, in fact, one of the actresses in it was just recently, she was nominated for Academy Award. She starred in After the Fall and Zone of Interest, Sandra Huller. You'll see her in the film. But it is a story for today, a story that involves artificial intelligence, if you will, in the guise of a humanoid, in the guise of a male robot, and a scientist, an anthropologist who is given the opportunity if she wants to get a grant to live with for 2 months, I believe it's 2 months, I'm not sure, with an artificial man, and see how artificial people can adapt with humans. You'll be very surprised by the film. It is essentially a comedy, but it's also a social comedy, and it is also a poignant film. It deals with feelings of identity, with feelings of what it means to have a companion, and loneliness. It is, I think, I think you'll find it a very interesting film, and one which I hope will motivate an interesting discussion. It is this one, it should be available on Canopy, as far as I know. It is I'm Your Man. I'm Your Man. And interestingly enough, just quickly, it was directed, the director of the film is the one that she directed two interesting things in the last year. She directed Unorthodox.
Oh,
If you had seen the series Unorthodox, she was the
Right.
director of Unorthodox. And she also directed the film about the two reporters who reported on the Harvey Weinstein affair in the New York Times,
wow.
who led that charge. So it's a well done film, a well done film, and a well acted film. So I'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Rachel, did you have something?
Yes, I wanted to say something. I just wanted to let people know that I saw this movie on Hoopla. Okay, and I think in Broward County, you can also get it. So if
That's
you
true,
can't
yeah.
find it on Canopy, check on Hoopla, because then you don't get commercials.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
I want to say that I saw it in Tubi, and they did not have two commercials. They skipped the commercials. Tubi, because they did not have it in the one that usually was.
Canopy didn't have it.
And Canopy
Yeah,
didn't have it.
and you know what? Their commercials are not that long, and they
Uh-huh.
sort of wear out after, you see the first three, and then maybe you won't get
I
any
think that's
more.
it.
Yeah,
2 or 3.
No, Tubi didn't have at all.
that's good. That's
That was
terrific.
good. It
We
was
want
good.
to thank Shelly and all of you for being here. Shelly, we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. As always, a wonderful presentation with great comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Have a good 2
you.
weeks, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Shelley.
Good night.
Thank
you,
you.
Shelley.
Night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.
Recording. Shelley, you know how to stop the recording?
Let's see.
I can think I can
It
stop.
says